What happens when evidence fades, witnesses forget, and justice goes cold? Some cases remain open for years, even decades, disappearances, murders, and lives interrupted with no resolution. Here, we revisit those files step by step, presenting timelines, official reports, and the haunting questions still unanswered. These are not just stories, they are puzzles frozen in time, real people, real mysteries, still waiting for truth. Nicole Fitz. Nicole Fitz was a hard-working mother living in San Francisco, determined to build a better life for her daughter, Ariana. She was employed at Best Buy, where her shifts were long and demanding, often requiring her to travel nearly 2 hours across the city each day. Despite the strain of her schedule and the challenges of single parenthood, Nicole was deeply committed to ensuring her child was cared for and loved. To manage the long hours away from home, she relied on trusted babysitters, including Helena Martin, Devin Martin, and Ciolo Hearn, who frequently looked after Ariana when Nicole was working. Ariana Fitz, born on September 6, 2013, was Nicole's only child. At just 2 years old, she was described by relatives as bright, bubbly, and affectionate, with a curious mind and a lively personality. Family members recalled her as intelligent beyond her years, full of energy, and with a touch of sass that made her unforgettable. To those who loved her, Ariana represented joy and promise, a child whose potential seemed limitless and whose smile brightened every room. Both Nicole and Ariana had strong ties to communities across California. They frequently moved between areas including San Mateo, Oakland, Fresno, Santa Cruz, and Silicon Valley, keeping close connections with relatives and friends. These networks reflected Nicole's resilience and her dedication to providing stability despite constant difficulties. She was remembered as selfless, reliable, and determined to overcome obstacles. Ariana was cherished as the center of her mother's world, a child who embodied hope and possibility. Together, they formed a bond that underscored the tragedy that would soon unfold. Ariana Fitz was last seen in late February 2016, while staying with babysitters in Oakland, California. She was only 2 years old, and her absence from public view in the weeks that followed created growing unease within the family. Her mother, Nicole Fitz, continued her demanding schedule at Best Buy, striving to balance her responsibilities and maintain stability despite mounting difficulties. By April 1st, 2016, the ordinary rhythm of Nicole's life was about to take a critical and devastating turn. On that evening, Nicole withdrew $600 from an ATM. The purpose of the withdrawal was never fully clarified, but the timing of the transaction would later draw attention. Hours afterward, Nicole contacted her roommate and explained that she was traveling to Fresno to meet a friend named Sam. This name was unfamiliar to her family and friends. None of them had ever heard of such a person, raising immediate questions about who Nicole was planning to see and why she would suddenly travel several hours away in the middle of the night. At approximately 1:13 a.m. on April 2nd, Nicole's Facebook account published a message that read, "Spending time with my 3-year-old need this break." For her loved ones, this post was deeply unsettling. Nicole was known to write with proper grammar and spelling, yet the message contained errors. The content also incorrectly described Ariana as 3 years old when she was 2, and it contradicted Nicole's earlier statement that she was going to Fresno. The inconsistencies fueled suspicion that Nicole herself had not written the post. The unexplained withdrawal, the mention of Sam, and the out-of-character Facebook update marked the final verifiable signs of Nicole before she vanished. On April 5, 2016, family members reported both Nicole Fitz and her daughter Ariana missing after 4 days without contact. Nicole had last been seen on April 1st, and Ariana had not been seen since late February. The silence was deeply troubling, and for the family, every hour without news intensified their fear. Authorities faced limitations because Nicole was an adult, legally free to travel, yet her disappearance was out of character and immediately suspicious. What alarmed relatives most was that Ariana had effectively vanished weeks earlier. Nicole had reassured them that the toddler was staying with babysitters, but none of the family had laid eyes on her for an extended period. Nicole's absence, combined with the unusual Facebook post claiming she was with her 3-year-old, created a chilling contradiction. Loved ones knew Ariana was only 2, and they also knew Nicole took great care in how she expressed herself online. Nicole's sisters, Catherine and Contessa, quickly stepped into action. They coordinated with relatives, reached out to police, and began contacting the babysitters. The responses they received were evasive and uncooperative, which only deepened the sense that something was terribly wrong. The family repeatedly emphasized to authorities that Nicole was a devoted mother who never neglected her responsibilities, and that she would not simply abandon her child. As the days passed, the weight of dread replaced any initial hope. What began as worry about missed calls and unusual messages transformed into the realization that both Nicole and Ariana were in danger, and the family's search became urgent and desperate. On April 8, 2016, Nicole Fitz's body was discovered in John McLaren Park in San Francisco. The grim finding came when a gardener noticed a large piece of plywood partially hidden among bushes. The board carried a spray-painted symbol, unusual enough to draw attention. When it was moved, a shallow grave was revealed. Inside, Nicole's remains were found, positioned in a fetal posture. The discovery confirmed that her disappearance had ended in violence, shifting the investigation from a missing persons case into a homicide inquiry. Authorities quickly secured the scene. The plywood covering the grave was recognized as deliberately placed, suggesting an attempt to conceal Nicole's body. Investigators noted that this element raised serious questions about premeditation. Whoever was responsible had not only buried her, but had taken the additional step of disguising the site. The symbolism on the wood added to the mystery, leaving open the question of its significance. The placement of Nicole's grave within McLaren Park carried chilling implications. The burial site was close to a playground, a disturbing detail given that Ariana remained missing. For investigators and family alike, the proximity underscored the urgency of locating the child. The contrast between the place of play and the scene of violence heightened the emotional weight of the discovery. The FBI and San Francisco police joined forces immediately after the body was found. Both agencies emphasized that Ariana was at risk and that the search for her would proceed alongside the murder investigation. With Nicole's death confirmed, authorities faced the dual challenge of solving a homicide while continuing the desperate search for a missing 2-year-old. Following the discovery of Nicole Fitz's body, investigators immediately turned their attention to those most recently connected to Ariana. 3 individuals were identified as persons of interest: Helena Martin, her husband Devin Martin, and Ciolo Hearn. All 3 had regularly acted as babysitters for Ariana, while Nicole worked long hours at Best Buy. Their connection placed them at the center of the inquiry. When approached by authorities, the babysitters were notably uncooperative. Their accounts were inconsistent, and their unwillingness to provide clarity raised concerns for investigators. Search warrants were executed at residences and properties in Oakland, Emeryville, and Daly City. These operations marked a significant expansion of the investigation, aimed at uncovering evidence that could explain both Nicole's murder and Ariana's disappearance. In 2017, authorities seized a vehicle believed to be tied to the case. The vehicle became an important focus of forensic examination, although officials withheld detailed findings. Evidence confirmed that Ariana had been in the care of Helena and Ciolo shortly before she vanished, yet both failed to account for what happened to the child. Their inability or refusal to provide answers intensified suspicions. Family members consistently voiced their belief that Nicole's murder and Ariana's disappearance were directly linked. Media reports added a further dimension by highlighting Helena Martin's prior history of violence, including time served for killing the father of her child. This fact deepened fears regarding the babysitter's potential involvement. Relatives also suggested that someone may have wanted Ariana as their own, raising troubling implications of abduction or illegal custody. Despite extensive searches, contradictory statements, and accumulating evidence, no arrests were made. Authorities continue to stress that these individuals remain crucial to understanding what truly happened on April 1, 2016. From 2016 onward, the disappearance of Ariana Fitz and the murder of her mother, Nicole Fitz, drew national attention. The case quickly extended beyond local authorities as the FBI formally joined the investigation, providing additional resources and expertise. Their involvement emphasized the seriousness of the situation and the risks posed to a missing toddler who had not been seen since February 2016. In an effort to keep Ariana's face in the public eye, age progression images were created and released. In 2020, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children distributed an updated rendering of what Ariana might look like at 6 years old. Another image followed in 2021, presenting how she might appear at 7. These visual tools aim to help the public recognize her, if she were alive, offering a vital chance at recovery. That same year, authorities announced a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. In 2022, the amount was raised to $250,000, making it one of the largest rewards ever offered in a San Francisco missing child case. Billboards were later displayed in Las Vegas in 2024, broadening awareness across state lines. National media also amplified the story, bringing Ariana's name to millions of listeners. Despite these efforts, thousands of tips, and years of active investigation, Ariana remains missing. Authorities continue to stress her vulnerability and the unresolved nature of her mother's homicide, underscoring the urgency for answers. Today, the disappearance of Ariana Fitz and the murder of Nicole Fitz remain unsolved. Both cases are still treated as active investigations by the San Francisco Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Nearly a decade has passed since Ariana was last seen in 2016, and Nicole's body was discovered in McLaren Park. Yet the central mysteries remain unresolved, leaving the family caught between grief and unanswered questions. Family members continue to cling to hope that Ariana is alive. Some believe she may have been taken by someone who intended to raise her as their own child. This belief sustains their search, even as the years go by. Authorities share the concern for her safety and stress that the possibility of her survival cannot be ruled out. As of December 2024, the FBI elevated Ariana's case to its list of most wanted missing persons, underscoring its importance on a national scale. Public awareness campaigns remain active, designed to ensure her face and name are not forgotten. Despite thousands of tips and significant evidence collected, the most pressing questions remain unanswered. Who killed Nicole Fitz? Where is Ariana? And why has no one been held accountable despite conflicting accounts, suspicious timelines, and confirmation that Ariana was in the babysitter's care? The absence of closure continues to weigh heavily on the family. Authorities emphasize their ongoing commitment to justice, but resolution has yet to come. The case now depends on continued vigilance, public attention, and the hope that someone with knowledge will step forward. Tracy Ocasio. On the night of May 26, 2009, 27-year-old Tracy Ocasio left her parents' home in Ocoee, Florida, with clear and simple plans. She was headed to the Florida Tap Room, her familiar hangout, to watch the Orlando Magic take on the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs. Before leaving, she told her mother she would return later that evening and made it clear she had no intention of spending the night elsewhere. By the next morning, May 27th, something already felt unusual. Tracy was known for her reliable contact with her mother. At 6:30 a.m., Liz went to check Tracy's room, but found it empty. Hoping for a quick explanation, she sent a text message reading, "Where are you?" Expecting at least a delayed response, Liz gave it time. By 8 a.m., with no reply, she placed a call. Still unanswered, she called again at 10 a.m. Growing anxious, Liz reached out to a friend she thought Tracy might have stayed with. That friend, however, had not seen her. As hours passed, unease shifted to alarm. At around 7 p.m., the Ocasio household received a call from the police asking for Tracy. Liz immediately explained that she too was searching for her daughter. Police soon delivered a critical update to Tracy Ocasio's family. Her yellow Chevy Cobalt had been discovered, abandoned on the front yard of a residence along Franklin Street in Ocoee. The car was unlocked, with no sign of Tracy's keys, wallet, or phone. The discovery immediately raised red flags. Investigators began retracing Tracy's final known steps. Their first stop was the Florida Tap Room, the bar where she had gone to watch the game. Speaking with staff, detectives learned that Tracy had been seen there the night before, but nothing unusual was reported. She had appeared relaxed, moving easily through the space like she often did, giving no outward sign that anything was wrong. The more valuable lead came from the bar's surveillance system. Detectives reviewed hours of footage, combing through details frame by frame. Eventually, they spotted Tracy leaving the tap room at approximately 1:30 a.m. She was not alone. Walking beside her was a man later identified as 28-year-old James Virgil Hadaway. This finding became the first concrete breakthrough. The video not only established a timeline, but also revealed the last known person with Tracy. Combined with the location of her abandoned car and the absence of her belongings, investigators narrowed their focus to what transpired between 1:30 a.m. and the morning of May 27th. On May 27th, detectives arrived at the Ocoee home of James Hadaway to question him about Tracy Ocasio's disappearance. Hadaway explained that he had met Tracy at the Florida tap room and asked her for a ride home. According to his account, she agreed and drove him back to his residence. Once there, he claimed the two planned to smoke marijuana together. However, when he showed her what he had, Tracy reportedly disapproved. Hadaway stated that she then left his home at around 2 a.m. and that he never saw or heard from her again. Investigators soon uncovered a detail that conflicted with his version of events. Tracy's phone had pinged off a tower near Hadaway's home at approximately 8 a.m. on May 27th, the same time her mother Liz had been trying to call her. This information elevated Hadaway from a casual witness to a person of interest, though he was not yet formally named as a suspect. On June 1st, 2009, detectives secured a search warrant for his residence. They were looking for Tracy's clothes, keys, wallet, or phone, but none were recovered. The only discovery was a marijuana bong, leading to his arrest for possession of drug paraphernalia. With no physical evidence tied directly to Tracy, investigators were left relying heavily on timelines, phone data, and Hadaway's inconsistent statements. The background of Tracy Ocasio provides valuable context for understanding her routines and choices in the days before she went missing. Her parents described her as a young woman who could make friends almost anywhere. Tracy's interests reflected her wide-ranging personality. She cared for unusual pets, including lizards and scorpions, while also having a beloved cat named Cookie. She enjoyed reading, often asking for books about World War II, aircraft, or ancient Rome as gifts. In addition to personal hobbies, she was taking community college classes, pursuing her education steadily. One of her favorite pastimes, making jewelry, became more than a hobby when she began selling her pieces online. Tracy was also a dedicated Orlando Magic fan. If she could not attend a game in person, she would go to the Florida Tap Room, a bar she considered a second home during basketball season. There, she was known to move easily from table to table, striking up conversations with regular patrons. The night she vanished, her actions reflected this established pattern, leaving home to watch the game, planning to return the same night, and staying in contact with her mother. The abrupt break in this routine explains why alarm rose so quickly. After James Hadaway's image appeared in connection with Tracy Ocasio's disappearance, a woman named Christy reached out to Ocoee detectives with a disturbing report from August 2008. In her account, she had agreed to give Hadaway a ride home after a party. When they arrived, he invited her inside to smoke marijuana. Christy declined, choosing instead to end the evening politely with a hug goodbye. That hug quickly turned into something else. Christy said Hadaway wouldn't let go, tightening his grip even as she cried out in pain. The situation escalated when he lunged at her, allegedly placing her in a chokehold and squeezing until she struggled to breathe. Somehow, she managed to break free and ran down the street screaming for help. Her escape was short-lived. Christy tripped, and Hadaway allegedly caught up, grabbing her by the hair. She described how he slammed her head against the curb, uttering chilling words. "Don't make me kill you." He then attempted to twist her neck. Neighbors heard Christy's desperate screams and came outside, creating the distraction she needed to pull away. Hadaway fled the scene, leaving her battered but alive. Christy's testimony added a powerful layer to the investigation. The details, choking, head slamming, explicit death threats, revealed a pattern of violence strikingly relevant to the last man seen with Tracy. Importantly, Hadaway was not arrested for this attack until Christy came forward again, prompted by his public identification. As coverage of Tracy Ocasio's disappearance intensified, another woman stepped forward with her own account. Known publicly as Hannah, she contacted the Orlando Sentinel with details of an encounter involving James Hadaway dating back to June 2008. Hannah explained that she had known Hadaway only casually, having seen him around the Seminole County bar scene. One evening, she agreed to give him a ride home. According to her statement, once they were inside her vehicle, the interaction shifted in an alarming direction. Hadaway allegedly pulled his pants down and attempted to force her into oral sex. Hannah refused. Choosing self-preservation, she left her own car and went back inside the bar, putting an end to the situation immediately. Notably, she never reported the incident to the police at the time. Although Hannah's story did not result in official charges or formal documentation, its emergence during media attention around Tracy's case added weight to a concerning picture. The details echoed familiar elements: a bar setting, a late-night ride, and subsequent aggression. For investigators, this account, surfacing after Hadaway's image appeared on news broadcasts, underscored recurring patterns. Even without direct evidence tying it to Tracy, it reinforced public tips and sharpened investigative focus on his history of behavior. On February 11, 2009, another case emerged that later intersected with the disappearance of Tracy Ocasio. That day, Chris George, also known as Onda Christopher George, spent time with friends James Hadaway and a man named Tyler. By the following day, February 12th, Chris was missing. Officers on patrol near Lake Carter in Apopka spotted Hadaway and Tyler leaving a wooded area. When questioned, they explained that Chris had been with them, had taken hallucinogens, and had suddenly run into the woods. They claimed they were still searching for him. Police began checking the area and soon located Chris's abandoned vehicle off Ocoee-Apopka Road, close to the lake. Hadaway and Tyler later told investigators that they had been driving around in Chris's car, pulled over near the lake, and watched him run off. According to their account, they could not find him, worried about the drugs inside the vehicle, and eventually cleaned the car before returning it to the wooded area. 2 years later, in February 2011, while searches for both Chris and Tracy continued, investigators made a grim discovery. Human bones and a skull were recovered near Lake Carter, along with Chris's wallet, cell phone, and jewelry. Testing confirmed the remains as Chris George. That same month, marking the second anniversary of his disappearance, Hadaway and Tyler were formally named persons of interest. Though no charges were filed, the geography, timing, and connections expanded the investigative lens around Hadaway. While the case of Tracy Ocasio remained unresolved, prosecutors turned their attention to the 2008 attack on Christie. This was the incident in which Christie alleged that James Hadaway had restrained, choked, and assaulted her after she gave him a ride home from a party. At trial, Hadaway took the stand in his own defense. He denied intending harm, insisting that he had cared about Christie. He attributed his behavior to intoxication, claiming that alcohol had left him unable to remember many of the details. His testimony presented a picture of confusion and diminished awareness, but it failed to sway the jury. After less than 2.5 hours of deliberation, jurors returned guilty verdicts. The charges were substantial: first-degree attempted murder, burglary, robbery, and false imprisonment. On April 1st, 2011, the judge sentenced Hadaway to life in prison. In court, the judge made a point of clarifying that the sentence applied specifically to Christie's case and was not connected to Tracy Ocasio's disappearance. Years later, in February 2015, Hadaway filed an appeal. He argued that he had been pressured by his lawyers to waive his rights to a speedy trial. The request was considered, but the result left his life sentence intact. Although Christie's case provided justice for one victim, it did not solve Tracy's disappearance. Instead, it confirmed judicially recognized violent conduct, reinforcing why Hadaway remained the central person of interest in Tracy's case. As of the most recent updates, James Hadaway has been considered a suspect in the disappearance of Tracy Ocasio since May 2010. Despite this designation, no new leads have emerged that would definitively resolve the case or provide answers to her family. In May 2022, the community marked the 13th anniversary of Tracy's disappearance. The following month, the Ocoee police chief addressed the public, reaffirming the department's dedication to finding Tracy, or at least learning what happened to her. He emphasized that closure for the family remains the ultimate goal, In his statement, he reminded the public that even the smallest piece of information, something that may appear inconsequential, could prove to be the critical link investigators need. The department has also announced plans to resubmit existing evidence for analysis, using advances in forensic technology in the hope of detecting details that earlier methods could not. This re-examination underscores the commitment to exhaust every possible avenue. At this stage, the case officially remains open and unsolved. Tracy's whereabouts are unknown, and no charges have been filed in connection with her disappearance. Law enforcement continues to encourage tips. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Ocoee Police Department at 407-905-3161. Angela Marie Hammond. Angela Marie Hammond was born on February 9, 1971, in Kansas City, Missouri. Her family moved to Clinton when she was young, and she grew up in a close-knit farming community where familiar faces and steady routines shaped daily life. Friends remembered Angie as outgoing, popular, and bright, the kind of person whose wide circle stayed close even after high school. By 19, she was already building an adult rhythm. Day classes at Central Missouri State University, evening shifts as a bank clerk, and weekends spent keeping up with friends and family. In November 1990, Angie began dating Rob Schaefer, a high school senior and star athlete known in Clinton for confidence and drive. Their connection deepened quickly. By January 1991, Angie learned she was pregnant. Rob responded with enthusiasm and soon proposed. Together, they started planning a shared future, renting a trailer, celebrating Angie's 20th birthday with family and friends, and preparing for marriage alongside the arrival of their child. Those who loved her recalled the careful balance she maintained, moving between coursework, employment, and anticipation about the growing family she and Rob imagined. Clinton itself was not a large town. It was considered safe and uneventful, a place where people expected life to proceed without sudden shocks. That sense of security framed Angie's optimism and grounded her plans. Against that backdrop, her abduction in April 1991 would devastate the community and alter the course of her young life, replacing routine expectations with unanswered questions that lingered long after her disappearance. On April 4, 1991, Angela Hammond and her fiancé Rob Schaefer spent the evening at a family barbecue hosted at her mother's home. The gathering was warm and ordinary, filled with conversation and routine closeness. By about 9 o'clock, the couple left, and Angie drove Rob to his family's house so that he could babysit his younger brother while his mother worked a late shift. Their plan was simple. Once Rob's mother returned, the two would meet again and spend the night together. Instead of going directly home, Angie picked up her friend Kyla, and the two spent the next hour driving around Clinton. For young people in the small Missouri town, such drives were a familiar pastime, a way of passing quiet evenings when entertainment options were limited. At around 11 o'clock, Angie dropped Kyla off at her house. Feeling tired, she decided not to continue the night, but still intended to call Rob before returning home. Because the trailer she shared with Rob had no home phone, Angie pulled into Clinton's town square and stopped at a payphone just a few blocks from where Rob was staying. At approximately 11:15 p.m., she dialed his number. Their conversation began casually. Angie explained that she was too tired to make the long drive back to her mother's house, and instead planned to head home. During the call, Angie's tone changed. She told Rob that an older green pickup truck was circling the block. The vehicle eventually parked beside her. Its driver, a disheveled man with glasses, overalls, and facial hair, briefly stood at a neighboring booth. Angie added that the truck bore a decal of a fish leaping from water. Uneasy but composed, she continued speaking with Rob. That call became her final known contact. As Angela Hammond continued her call from the Clinton payphone, the situation turned unsettling. The man she had described earlier returned to his truck, using a flashlight to rummage in the back. At Rob's suggestion, Angie asked if he needed the phone. The man reportedly replied that he would be back later. Moments later, the quiet broke. Rob heard Angie scream through the line, followed by a male voice stating, "I didn't need to use the phone anyway." The connection abruptly ended. Rob reacted instantly. He ran to his car and sped toward the town square. On his way, a green pickup truck raced past him in the opposite direction. From inside, he heard a female voice shout his name. "Rob!" He attempted a sharp maneuver to turn and give chase, but the move damaged his car's transmission. Despite the setback, he managed to follow the truck for roughly 2 miles. Then his vehicle stalled, leaving him helpless as the taillights vanished into the darkness. Desperate, Rob tried to flag down other drivers. Eventually, one stopped and drove him to the Clinton police station. Officers hurried to the scene of the payphone. Angie's Mustang was still parked nearby, and the phone hung from its receiver, swaying against the booth wall. There was no trace of Angie herself. The entire abduction unfolded within minutes. Witnesses later confirmed seeing a green truck circling in town days before. Police concluded Angie had been kidnapped. Despite Rob's frantic pursuit, Angela Hammond was never seen again. In the immediate aftermath of Angela Hammond's disappearance, investigators focused their attention on Rob Schaefer. As the last person to speak with her, and the man who reported the abduction, he was treated as both a primary witness and a potential suspect. Detectives questioned him repeatedly, scrutinizing his story of the frantic chase. A mechanical inspection of his car confirmed that the transmission was indeed damaged, lending weight to his account. Within a week, Rob was officially cleared of suspicion, though the trauma of that night lingered heavily over him. Attention then shifted to the mysterious truck. Witnesses came forward describing a late 1960s to early 1970s Ford pickup, sometimes reported as two-tone with a white top. A detail that stood out was a fish decal covering the rear window, noted independently by multiple people. Several recalled seeing a vehicle of that description circling Clinton's payphones in the days before April 4th, fueling suspicion that Angie's abduction may have been planned rather than random. Despite the promising description, the investigation quickly stalled. Police were unable to identify the truck or its driver. Composite sketches were prepared, though their reliability was limited since Angie's observations had only been relayed through Rob. The FBI joined the search, and efforts extended beyond Clinton into neighboring counties. Flyers were distributed, tip lines were opened, and a reward of up to $10,000 was announced. Still, no solid leads emerged. Rumors spread through the community, including speculation about Angie's ex-boyfriend, Bill Barker. Whispered claims suggested he could be the father of her child, but Barker passed a polygraph and was cleared. By late April, with no physical evidence and no new sightings, momentum faded, leaving Angie's family and Rob facing growing uncertainty. Angela Hammond's disappearance did not stand alone. Investigators quickly recognized troubling parallels with other unsolved crimes across Missouri, raising fears of a broader pattern. In January 1991, just 3 months before Angie vanished, Trudy Darby, a 42-year-old convenience store worker, was abducted while closing her shop in Max Creek. 2 days later, her body was discovered on a remote gravel road. She had been shot twice in the head. The case eventually led to the conviction of Jesse Rush and Marvin Chaney, who were sentenced for her murder. While imprisoned, Rush wrote letters hinting that he and his half-brother had been responsible for additional killings, though he never named other victims. The following month, in February 1991, Cheryl Kenny, a 30-year-old clerk in Nevada, Missouri, also disappeared under strikingly similar circumstances. She locked up her store for the night, but never arrived home. Her car remained parked in the lot, untouched. Unlike Darby, Cheryl's body was never found, and her case remains unsolved. Authorities also considered connections to earlier and later disappearances. In 1987, Diana Braungard vanished after leaving her job in Crystal City. In 1992, the infamous Springfield 3 case saw 3 women disappear from a single home, their possessions left behind in eerie stillness. The clustering of these crimes, women vanishing at night from public or semi-public places, sparked speculation of a serial predator. Some pointed to known killers such as Kenneth McDuff or Tommy Lynn Sells, both active in Missouri during that period. Yet no solid evidence linked them to Angie. Although Rush and Chaney were convicted for Darby's murder, investigators never tied them to Hammond or Kenny. Still, the disturbing similarities continue to fuel suspicion that Angie's abduction may not have been random, but instead part of a larger violent trend. For 30 years, Angela Hammond's disappearance offered little progress. Then, in 2021, on the 30th anniversary of her abduction, the Clinton Police Department presented a striking new development. Investigators disclosed the existence of a ransom-style note, postmarked April 4th, 1991, the very day Angie vanished. Constructed from magazine clippings, the letter had been sent to a man working as a confidential informant in a narcotics investigation, placing its timing and content under sharp scrutiny. The message carried direct threats. It referenced the informant himself, named his estranged wife, and delivered a chilling warning about his foxy daughter Angela. When police examined the details, they discovered the informant indeed had a daughter named Angela who was living in Clinton at the time. This revelation reshaped the focus of the case. Investigators began to consider that Angie Hammond may have been taken in a tragic instance of mistaken identity, abducted by criminals intending to target another young woman with the same name. While powerful in implication, the theory has not been proven. The letter only surfaced decades later, and questions remain about whether it represented an authentic plan or a threatening scare tactic meant to intimidate the informant. Yet the alignment of the postmark date, the personalized details, and the eerie name coincidence provided investigators with a fresh lead. Authorities appealed publicly for assistance, urging the anonymous individual who tipped them off in 2021 to step forward and share more information. With that appeal, the mistaken identity theory has become the leading explanation, reframing Angela Hammond's disappearance as a possible act of misdirected vengeance rather than the work of an opportunistic predator. More than 3 decades after that April night, Angela Hammond remains missing. Her disappearance continues to weigh heavily on Clinton, Missouri, a small community where violent crime was rare and where residents once assumed safety as part of daily life. For Rob Schaefer, her fiancé, and for Angie's family, the absence of answers has left a lasting emptiness. The questions surrounding what happened remain as pressing now as they were in 1991. Investigators still appeal for information, focusing in particular on the distinctive green truck with the fish decal that multiple witnesses reported. Age-progressed images of Angie have been created and distributed to the public, offering a haunting glimpse of what she might look like today. Yet despite those efforts, authorities acknowledge that she was most likely murdered shortly after her abduction. Her case has since taken a place among Missouri's most infamous unsolved crimes. It stands as a reminder that even small, seemingly secure towns can be struck by sudden violence. Theories have ranged from serial offenders to random predators and, more recently, the possibility of mistaken identity. Still, none of these explanations has delivered finality or closure. The 2021 revelation of the ransom-style letter reignited public interest and offered investigators a fresh perspective. Authorities continue to urge anyone with knowledge, particularly the anonymous tipster who came forward that year, to share what they know. For her family, closure means answers. Whether through the discovery of remains or confirmation of the truth behind her abduction, they continue to wait. Angela Hammond's story endures as a symbol of persistence in cold case investigations, and as a reminder of a young woman whose life was cut short by violence. Noreen Higuchi Brown. On the night of December 12, 1990, in New Hyde Park, Long Island, 31-year-old Noreen Higuchi Brown left her home at approximately 11 p.m. Her plan was simple: a quick trip to the supermarket to buy ingredients for Christmas cookies. Earlier in the day, she had enjoyed the holiday season with her children and her sister, Susan. They had gone shopping for Christmas gifts, ending their outing with a visit to Santa at the mall. Afterward, Noreen dropped Susan back at her home in Franklin Square and returned to New Hyde Park. According to her husband, John Brown, the evening took a different turn. He later explained that he and Noreen had a brief argument before she headed out again. Afterward, he said he fell asleep on the couch, assuming his wife would return shortly. He did not realize that she never came home. The following morning, December 13th, a day that should have been her 32nd birthday, John contacted family friend Elaine Commando. He asked whether Noreen had spent the night at her house. When Elaine said she had not, he asked her to check the Pathmark supermarket on Jericho Highway in Garden City Park, roughly a mile from the Brown home. Elaine drove to the location and discovered Noreen's car in the parking lot. The vehicle was locked. Inside were wrapped Christmas gifts, along with her pocketbook containing $45 in cash. Significantly, her wallet and identification remained at home, reinforcing the impression that Noreen intended only a short errand. After Elaine found the car, John contacted the police and officially reported her missing. The scene yielded no confirmation that Noreen had entered the supermarket. One employee remembered seeing the car shortly after 11 p.m., but could not recall seeing Noreen herself. Friends later explained that she often shopped late to avoid crowds, making the late-night trip consistent with her habits. Born on December 13, 1958, Noreen Higuchi Brown grew up on Long Island, where she attended Uniondale High School. After graduation, she entered the workforce, taking a position in an office before meeting John Brown, the man she would later marry. Together, the couple built a life in New Hyde Park, raising 2 children in a community defined by close ties and familiar routines. Those who knew Noreen describe her as a devoted mother, daughter, wife, and friend, someone deeply engaged with her family and the rhythms of everyday life. By late 1990, Noreen was fully immersed in preparing for the holiday season, a time of year she cherished. On the very day of her disappearance, she had spent hours shopping for Christmas gifts with her children and her sister, Susan, even making a stop to visit Santa before returning home. That evening, she planned to bake Christmas cookies, a tradition that reflected both her enthusiasm for the holidays and her devotion to her family. Her decision to run errands late at night, while unusual to some, fit with her preference for quiet, uncrowded stores, a pattern well recognized by her family and friends. The community surrounding New Hyde Park, Garden City Park, and Franklin Square had the atmosphere of a small town where neighbors knew one another and holiday preparations gave December its distinct character. This context reinforces the ordinariness of Noreen's actions in the hours before she disappeared. She was not a distant figure defined only by a cold case, but a woman living a routine, family-centered life. These details provide the essential foundation for understanding how a familiar setting, a loving household, and a short errand converged on a disappearance that has remained unresolved for decades. In the days that followed, John Brown's fellow firefighters joined the search effort, combing the area for any sign of Noreen. Despite the coordinated response, early checks failed to confirm whether she ever entered the supermarket that night. An employee recalled seeing the vehicle in the lot after 11 p.m., but no one remembered seeing Noreen herself. Later accounts referenced the possibility of an argument in the parking lot, but at this initial stage of the investigation, there was no corroborated witness testimony to support it. Furthermore, the absence of surveillance cameras, typical for 1990, meant investigators lacked the visual evidence that could have clarified her movements. The abandoned vehicle's position, barely 1 mile from the family home, highlighted how an ordinary local trip had suddenly turned into an unexplained disappearance. These early details established the factual record on which later investigations would be built. As the investigation widened, several leads emerged, though many proved either unverified or disputed. John Brown, in an interview with News 12 Long Island, stated that he believed Noreen had been murdered. He cited a reported witness account of an argument in the Pathmark parking lot around the time of her disappearance. Investigators, however, later explained that no additional witnesses came forward to corroborate this report, leaving it unverified and inconclusive. Beyond statements, early searches extended across multiple areas. Contemporary reporting documented sweeps of wooded locations, as well as a large-scale search of Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx, near the firehouse where John worked. These searches, while extensive, yielded no confirmed evidence that could move the case forward. Over time, a procedural dispute developed regarding access to properties connected to the family. Police records indicated that permission to search was not granted, and without sufficient probable cause, no warrants were issued. John later contradicted this position, insisting that he had allowed access and that dogs had been brought in to search a backyard. This disagreement left uncertainty about the extent of property-based investigation during the crucial early period. Friends added another layer of unresolved concern years later when they learned of a well located behind the couple's former apartment, situated above a plumbing store. By then, the property had changed hands, and the current owner described the well as long filled and sealed under concrete, making examination complicated. Compounding these difficulties was the absence of surveillance technology in 1990, which denied investigators visual confirmation of events. These unresolved leads, the unverified argument, the limited search results, and the conflicting accounts over access, highlighted the obstacles that ultimately stalled progress in the case, despite determined public and official attention. Accounts from those closest to the family describe a marriage marked by turbulence in the period before Noreen Brown's disappearance. Her friend Elaine Commando recalled that Noreen and John Brown often experienced conflict, and Noreen had confided to friends that she was unhappy in her marriage. Reporting from the time, along with later recollections, reinforced the sense that arguments between the couple were frequent and noticeable to those around them. One piece of official documentation highlighted these tensions. Approximately 11 months before Noreen went missing, a domestic incident report was filed. The report recorded an allegation that John had threatened Noreen's life. It also noted that she bore an abrasion on her neck, an injury linked to the complaint. The matter was referred to family court, and in the end, Noreen signed off on the case, indicating that she did not wish to pursue further police assistance. While no additional charges resulted, the record remained as a concrete indicator of marital strain. After Noreen's disappearance, the family's struggles continued in the legal system. In 1994, Noreen's parents sought grandparent visitation rights with her 2 children. The court ultimately ruled in John's favor, citing concerns that Noreen's mother, who had publicly voiced her belief that John was responsible for her daughter's disappearance, might influence the children's opinions against their father. Court evaluators therefore recommended supervised visitation as a safeguard, limiting the maternal family's contact with the children. Despite suspicions repeatedly raised by friends and relatives, John Brown has never been named a suspect by police. He later remarried, and law enforcement has maintained its position of not identifying him or anyone else as formally connected to the disappearance. These records and testimonies illustrate the documented family conflict and the legal consequences that followed. Public attention to Noreen Brown's disappearance never fully faded, sustained by both media coverage and community action. In the immediate aftermath, News 12 Long Island provided extensive reporting throughout 1990 and 1991, capturing the searches that unfolded and interviewing family members desperate for answers. Noreen's sister Susan initially expressed her belief that Noreen had been abducted, but as months passed, her view shifted, and she declared that she was convinced her sister had been murdered. These interviews reflected the uncertainty and pain that shaped the family's experience. Decades later, a new wave of efforts emerged. At a 2017 high school reunion, friends who had known Noreen since adolescence reignited interest in her case. Among them were Elaine, Sue, and Maria, who resolved to bring the story back into public focus. Together, they coordinated with the Nassau County Police Department, hoping renewed visibility might spark new leads. They distributed flyers at the location where Noreen's car had been found, the former Pathmark supermarket. By then operating under a different name, their commitment extended beyond flyers. The group pursued property records from local authorities, seeking details connected to the couple's past addresses. They also spoke with the current owner of the plumbing store and apartment where Noreen and John once lived. The owner confirmed awareness of the backyard well, but explained it had long been filled and sealed beneath concrete, complicating any potential search. Through each step, friends emphasized Noreen's identity, not as a statistic, but as a mother whose children grew up without answers. Their persistence, alongside archived media reports, ensured the case remained visible. Even without new forensic breakthroughs, personal networks and community memory kept Noreen's name alive. More than 3 decades later, the disappearance of Noreen Higuchi Brown remains unresolved. The verified record establishes a limited but important chain of events. On the night of December 12, 1990, she left her new Hyde Park home around 11 p.m. to shop at the nearby Pathmark supermarket. Her car was later found locked in the lot, with Christmas gifts inside and her pocketbook containing $45 left untouched. At the same time, her wallet and identification remained at home, suggesting she intended only a short errand. Notably, no confirmed witness placed Noreen inside the store that evening. Alongside these facts are details that remain disputed or unverified. One report referenced an argument in the parking lot near the time she disappeared, a claim mentioned by John Brown and noted in police files, but no corroborating witnesses ever stepped forward. Similarly, there are conflicting accounts over whether investigators were granted access to properties connected to the family. Police have stated that permission was not granted and that there was no probable cause for a warrant, while John later asserted that access was given and that canine searches were conducted. Additional factors complicated the investigation. In 1990, there was no surveillance video to provide clarity. Over time, physical changes, such as a well reportedly filled and sealed under concrete, limited the possibility of revisiting certain sites. These obstacles, combined with the passage of decades, left investigators without definitive answers. Despite opinions voiced by friends and relatives, law enforcement has never named a suspect, and John Brown has never been identified as one. Today, friends continue working with the Nassau County Police Department, determined to keep Noreen's name visible while key questions remain. What happened between her departure and the discovery of her car, whether any confrontation occurred, and whether unexplored areas should still be re-examined. Tara Lee Calico. Tara Lee Calico was born on February 28, 1969, in New Mexico. Her life is understood through anchors: early independence, an organized yet adventurous temperament, and a habit of responsibility. Family called her Teeny Tara, a family nickname indeed, affectionately. She managed routines herself, helped others, and showed leadership that felt practical rather than performative. Her family context is direct and important. Her mother, Patty, her stepfather, John Dole, her biological father, David Calico, and her siblings. Within that blended household, Tara's self-sufficiency matured into reliability. She is described as intelligent, athletic, and vibrant. Someone who balanced work, school, sports, and relationships with lists, plans, and follow-through. Ambition pointed her toward the study of the mind. She aimed to become a psychologist or psychiatrist, a path consistent with observation and an interest in people. Outside classrooms and jobs, she maintained an active lifestyle that shaped her routines and energy. Cycling stood out as the passion that organized her time: measured miles, a familiar route, and the calm focus of steady motion. That discipline mirrored her broader approach to life: deliberate choices paired with curiosity. This portrait sets the foundation for what follows. Before any timeline of events, Tara appears as more than a victim of circumstance: a daughter, sister, student, athlete, and friend whose momentum, order, and open-heartedness defined her days. On the morning of September 20th, 1988, 19-year-old Tara Calico prepared for her day with her usual precision. She laid out her belongings and chose her mother's neon pink Huffy bicycle, since her own had a flat tire. It was a bright 12-speed mountain bike, distinctive with yellow cables and sidewalls, easily recognizable along the highway. Tara dressed in a white t-shirt, white shorts with green stripes, ankle socks, and turquoise Avius sneakers. She carried her yellow Sony Walkman, listening to her favorite Boston cassette, a routine that added rhythm to her ride. Her schedule for the day was full as always. After her morning exercise, she planned to meet her boyfriend, Jack Cole, for a tennis match at 12:30, then attend classes at the University of New Mexico, Valencia campus later that afternoon. She balanced academics, fitness, and relationships seamlessly, reflecting her disciplined yet energetic lifestyle. Her mother, Patty, had recently stopped joining her on rides. She feared that a motorist had been following them during earlier outings, and she urged Tara to carry mace for protection. Tara refused, dismissing the suggestion, but she did tell Patty that if she was not home by noon, she should come looking for her. At about 9:30 a.m., she set off from her home in Rio Communities, heading south on Route 47. Witnesses later confirmed sightings of Tara during her return northbound journey around 11:45 a.m. Several described a white or light gray pickup truck closely following her, moving slowly behind as she pedaled unaware with her headphones on. This moment marked the last time Tara Calico was ever seen alive, and the ordinary ride turned into the beginning of a mystery. When Tara Calico did not return home by noon on September 20th, 1988, her mother, Patty, kept to her daughter's request and went searching. Driving along the familiar route, she looked for any sign of Tara or the distinctive pink bicycle, but found nothing. Concern grew quickly. Tara's boyfriend, Jack Cole, joined the effort, accompanied by his friend Bernard Nixon. Tara's stepfather, John Dole, also took part, and together they retraced the cycling path along Route 47. They questioned men repairing a fence who recalled seeing Tara earlier. The group then entered the John F. Kennedy campground, where they encountered 3 men sitting in a truck. These men denied seeing Tara, but their presence left lingering unease. With no trace of her found, Patty returned home around mid-afternoon and contacted hospitals before reporting her daughter missing to the Valencia County Sheriff's Office. By evening, an official search was underway. Deputies, family, and volunteers combed the area until late into the night. Rain and strong winds moved in around 8 o'clock, complicating efforts by erasing tire tracks and scattering potential evidence. The search was suspended around 2 in the morning, with nothing conclusive discovered. At daybreak, the effort resumed. Investigators and volunteers scoured ditches, fields, and roadside shoulders. Near the JFK campground, they located fragments of Tara's yellow Sony Walkman, a cracked plastic window, and a Boston cassette tape lying in the mud. Other debris included a beer can and what looked like a bike reflector. Tracks on the shoulder suggested the bicycle may have been dragged from the roadway. Despite extensive ground sweeps and aerial searches involving police, military, and volunteers, the pink Huffy mountain bike was never recovered. The urgency of those first hours weighed heavily on Tara's family, as the possibility of abduction became increasingly undeniable. Several witnesses recalled seeing a suspicious vehicle following Tara Calico during her bike ride on the morning of September 20th, 1988. The truck was described as a white or primer gray Ford pickup, an older model from the 1950s, with a camper shell attached. Multiple accounts placed the vehicle trailing Tara at a slow pace, staying close behind her as she cycled along Route 47. The image of a lone rider unaware of a vehicle shadowing her became a central detail in the investigation. One of the most significant witnesses was Ishmael de la Rosa. He gave an especially detailed description, noting the driver as a middle-aged Caucasian man with bright reddish-brown hair. He observed pressed khaki shirts hanging inside the truck, garments resembling the type worn by members of law enforcement. His account stood out for its specificity, providing investigators with more than vague impressions. De La Rosa promptly attempted to share his statement with local authorities, reaching out to Captain Ray Flores of the Valencia County Sheriff's Office. However, his information was not immediately welcomed. Flores seemed reluctant to accept his testimony, and only after persistent effort was De La Rosa allowed to give a formal account. Eventually, under hypnosis, De La Rosa identified a man from a photo lineup as the driver he had seen. Based on his input, a composite sketch was produced and released in 1989. The sketch depicted a man aged between 35 and 40, with reddish hair and distinguishing facial features. The delay in processing his statement, combined with the lack of urgency from local authorities, raised doubts early in the investigation. Questions of negligence or possible corruption surrounded the handling of critical evidence that might have altered the course of the case. In June 1989, nearly a year after Tara Calico vanished, a striking discovery was made in the parking lot of a convenience store in Port St. Joe, Florida. A woman noticed a Polaroid photograph lying face down on the pavement. When she picked it up, the image revealed a disturbing scene. A young woman and a boy, both appearing to be bound at the wrists and gagged with duct tape, lying in the back of a van. The photograph quickly drew attention because of the girl's resemblance to Tara. Her family studied the details closely. They pointed to a scar visible on the young woman's leg, a mark that matched one Tara had from a past car accident. Another chilling clue lay beside her, a paperback copy of My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews, Tara's favorite author. To Patty and John Dole, these details felt undeniable. At the same time, the boy in the picture was thought to resemble Michael Henley, a child who had disappeared in New Mexico just months before Tara. Both families traveled to Florida, convinced the Polaroid held the image of their missing loved ones. Experts were called upon to analyze the photo. Scotland Yard concluded that the girl was Tara, while the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed, and the FBI classified the results as inconclusive. The lack of consensus deepened the mystery and left families in torment. In the years that followed, additional photographs surfaced with similar themes of restraint and distress. Yet, none could be definitively confirmed as Tara. Despite the uncertainty, the Port St. Joe Polaroid remains the most haunting artifact associated with her case, symbolizing both fragile hope and lingering doubt. Local suspicions soon turned inward, focusing not on strangers, but on individuals connected to Tara Calico's own community. Allegations emerged that her disappearance involved teenagers from prominent families in Valencia County. Most notably, Lawrence Romero Jr., the son of the county sheriff, and several of his close associates. Witness accounts and persistent rumors suggested that Tara may have been struck by a truck, abducted, and ultimately killed after she threatened to go to the authorities. These claims painted a disturbing picture of violence carried out by people shielded by influence and fear. Years later, deathbed confessions and testimonies appeared to reinforce these suspicions. A man named Henry Brown came forward, recounting conversations and observations that aligned with theories implicating Romero Jr. and his circle. Other statements added further weight, though each contained inconsistencies that left investigators uncertain about the precise sequence of events. Still, the overlap between multiple accounts made it difficult to dismiss the possibility that Tara's fate was tied to individuals within her community who were well-known and well-connected. In 2008, Sheriff Rene Rivera reignited public interest when he claimed to know exactly what had happened. According to Rivera, teenagers had struck Tara with a vehicle, panicked, and then silenced her permanently when she threatened exposure. He stated that others assisted in concealing evidence afterward. However, despite making these assertions publicly, Rivera acknowledged that no arrests would be made, citing the absence of Tara's body or her missing bicycle as critical gaps. Romero Jr.'s own death in 1991 added another layer of controversy. Officially described as either suicide or a deadly accident, it fueled speculation that truth had died with him. Combined with fears of retaliation and whispers of a cover-up, these circumstances left lingering doubts that justice was deliberately obstructed. In the years following the initial investigation, Tara Calico's disappearance continued to attract widespread attention. National television programs such as Oprah and Unsolved Mysteries featured the case, bringing her story to millions of viewers across the country. Each appearance reignited public interest and generated new tips, though none provided the definitive breakthrough her family longed for. Her mother, Patty, and stepfather, John Dole, worked tirelessly to keep the search alive. They distributed flyers, gave interviews, and even took the unusual step of becoming formally deputized. This allowed them access to certain investigative avenues and gave them the ability to carry weapons during searches, underscoring their commitment to finding Tara. Despite their relentless efforts, no resolution came. In 2006, Patty passed away at the age of 64, never learning the truth about what happened to her daughter. Law enforcement revisited the case multiple times in subsequent years. In 2013, a cold case task force was established, designed to re-examine Tara's disappearance alongside other unresolved investigations. By 2018, authorities revealed that 2 informants had provided new information, leading investigators to actively pursue fresh leads involving suspects who had been teenagers at the time of the crime. Momentum continued to build. In 2019, the FBI announced a $20,000 reward for information leading to Tara's recovery, signaling renewed federal involvement. 2 years later, in 2021, officials disclosed that a sealed search warrant had been issued for a private residence in Valencia County, though details remained restricted. Finally, in 2023, the Valencia County Sheriff's Department declared that they had identified a suspect and gathered sufficient evidence to present the case to the district attorney. While unanswered questions still overshadowed the investigation, this announcement revived hope that long-awaited justice could be within reach. Decades after her disappearance, Tara Calico's case remains unresolved, leaving her story suspended between memory and mystery. Despite extensive investigations, national coverage, and a multitude of leads, her whereabouts are still unknown. The unanswered questions continue to weigh heavily, not only on investigators, but on the many people who have followed her case over the years. Her family's determination remains central to her legacy. Patty, her mother, is remembered for an unyielding pursuit of answers. From organizing searches to appearing on national television, she became the most visible advocate for her daughter's cause. Even after her passing in 2006, the determination she embodied has continued to inspire others. John Dole, Tara's stepfather, also devoted himself to keeping the case in the public eye, ensuring it never faded from collective memory. Tara's disappearance has become a subject of documentaries, podcasts, and investigative reporting, each effort aiming to preserve her story while seeking clarity. These portrayals have kept her name alive across generations, sparking interest from true crime audiences and fueling the hope that one day the truth might emerge. Yet, Despite the theories, whether pointing to local involvement or tied to the haunting Polaroid discovered in Florida, no single explanation has been confirmed. The absence of resolution leaves Tara as both a symbol of enduring mystery and a reminder of the limits of justice when evidence is scarce. However, she is remembered not only through unanswered questions, but also as a vibrant young woman whose life was filled with energy, ambition, and potential. Her legacy persists in the memories of family, friends, and strangers compelled by her story, ensuring that Tara Calico is remembered for who she was, not just for how she vanished. If you found value in our work, please like, share, and subscribe to support us.